What is up, fight fans? I am Jason BURGOS for Sherdog.com, and my guest is a man coming off of a highlight reel knockout in his UFC debut in January. And now, on Saturday at UFC 250, he will return to the octagon to face off with a man entering year 11 on the UFC roster in Evan Dunham. And that man I speak of is known as The Blaze, aka Herbert Burns. Herbert, my man. Thanks for the time to talk. This return back to the octagon.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you for having me. Let's talk about the my next upcoming bout there.
Now, before we talk about that, I mean, I have to get into this because it's fresh news. It just happened. I gotta ask about your brother's impressive win, UFC ESPN 9 against a future Hall of Famer in Tyron Woodley. I've talked to fighters and they almost universally admit feeling more nervous for teammates' fights than their own. But this teammate is also your flesh and blood. Were there a lot of nerves watching that fight, or did it kind of play out like you guys all had been planning for weeks, and the further it went along, the more relaxed you felt, and you pretty much just sat back and enjoyed the show?
It went how we planned, but that doesn't mean I was relaxed at all. He almost gave me a heart attack. I got pretty live. Like I was cornering him against Damian Maia his last fight. I wasn't nervous. He got nervous. Yeah, I can control more of my nerves because I'm focused on doing the cornerman job, so I'm analyzing the fights and doing. But at home, you're just a spectator, so you're not controlling yourself at all. You're just watching the fight, and there's nothing you can do to help. You can say whatever, he's never going to hear. So yeah, pretty nervous. It was a cardiac test yesterday, but it was all fine. The fights played out just like we planned. Gilbert was using the fence, using his striking, using his jiu-jitsu, using his wrestling, and he was better everywhere, won every single round. The first round was 10-8 in my view. So it was a phenomenal performance.
Now, I was a little bit surprised, but maybe I shouldn't have been considering Tyron's ranking. That was your brother calling for a title fight with Kamaru Usman after the fight. You guys all trained together at Sanford MMA. Has that fight been something openly talked about in the gym and everyone's kind of cool with it, or at least knows that's something that does make sense? Or, especially because Gilbert has now fought two guys that Kamaru fought, probably beat him better too. Or was that call out even a surprise to you?
They are en route. They are en route. There's no denial on that. We don't need to talk about that because they are both very smart men. They are professional. They fight in a sport that's only one champion, and everyone wants to be the champion. Everyone wants to be the champion. You can't deny a person that's trying to achieve the same dream as you. You can't stop them from achieving that dream. And Kamaru is a training partner. Even after the fight, he said, "Hey, I'm impressed with the performance." And I think Gilbert can deserve the fight. I'm not the UFC. I'm not the matchmaker. I'm not Dana White. I'm not the guys that make the fight. I think Gilbert deserved the fight. He beat Damian Woodley better than Usman did. Usman's a great champion. He's a training partner of us. We have a lot of love and respect to him. But I don't think there's nothing to be said. They know eventually they will fight. If they both keep winning, they both will fight eventually. And if Usman doesn't fight for Gilbert next, and if he needs help from me or from Gilbert or any other guys, I'm sure we would help him. We are professionals and we want the team to keep the belt.
No, fair enough. Now, before we get to the fight on Saturday, I wanted to quickly go back to your debut in January. Going into that fight, you had not won a pro fight by knockout yet, but the industry was well aware of how good you were on the ground. You ended up knocking Nate Landwehr out with a perfectly placed knee. Now, Nate is a brawler, kind of wild style striker who's never been KO'd in 16 fights before that. On some level, did you even surprise yourself a little bit, or that right moment to unleash all these striking skills that you had been developing for a while, they didn't show up for all this time until that moment with Nate, and you finally got to show the world how good of a striker you can be?
I always believe I was a good striker. I said before the fight, previous the fight, that I was going to put on a statement to win, and then that was better than Nate everywhere. And some people are like, yeah, I'm like, no, I'm better than him everywhere. But my jiu-jitsu is very effective. I have a very effective grappling. And before I had 4 wins in a row, my last 3 wins was jiu-jitsu all the way. I managed to quickly use my jiu-jitsu and neutralize any striking and action in the fight. But that doesn't mean I didn't improve. I've been working on my striking a long time. I trained in Singapore first for Muay Thai world champions. They moved here to America, training for Henry Hooft for a long time. Henry Hooft, that doesn't get the credit he deserves, because he made like Gilbert, Kamaru, guys that won.
Ong La Unsung too.
Yes. So I think he deserves a lot more credit. And man, I've been working on my striking, like I said, for a long time. And you don't need to show your skill at once. If I could I want to get the fight as finished as soon as I can. That's why it's the Blaze, because I blaze it through my own. I want to keep the mystic going and try to finish the fight as soon as I can. But if I can't finish on the ground, then I work on the feet.
All right. So talk to me about how this fight with Evan Dunham came together, because it's taking place at a catchweight of 150. Since you are featherweight, he's been a long time, mostly all of his career lightweight. Was the catchweight to try and not put yourself in an unfair spot of jumping up in weight to where he can hydrate to where he wants? This is like an unusual match. I'm sure no one expected it. Did you feel like, okay, I can do this fight, but I'm not going to lightweight to fight a guy who's a pretty sizable lightweight? He needs to come to me a little bit with this.
Yes. And it was hard to get a fight. I wanted to fight on the 9th, and then the 9th went to 16, and then to the 23rd, and then to the 30th. My plan was to fight the same day as Gilbert. That was the plan. But I couldn't get opponents. Few people didn't like the matchup. It was a short time to make weight also. And I was low on the weight already, but Evan Dunham was completely off my radar. And because he was retired, then he came back for his matchup against Michael Johnson, but Michael Johnson lightweight.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dang, I still, Ali is my manager, and I've been talking for Ali every day. Hey man, I want to fight. And when they announced the card, I was like, seriously? I'm not going to fight. I got pissed off. I was already doing that. Seriously? They didn't even put me opponent to be announced. And then I spoke for Ali, and he's like, man, my man, I can't promise anything, but I will keep trying. And then he did some of his magic. And then, they announced the fight yesterday. So a day before, he called me, hey, I have a fight for you, Evan Dunham. And I'm like, oh, no, nice. I like the fight. But cannot be 145. I'm like, all right, let's do 150. He's like, you can go to 155 because I'm not a small featherweight.
Yeah, exactly.
Nah, not really. Let's go to catchweight. I want to show the UFC that I'm a featherweight. I have no plans yet to move division. I want to stay and grow on the featherweight rankings. So I think the catchweight fight makes perfectly sense for me to get a fight, Evan Dunham to get a fight, both of us to get a fight. And it's a weight that will be doable for both of us. And I don't know if he wants to move down to featherweight, and because I want to stay a featherweight, but if you want to go back to lightweight after, he'll be free to do so.
At this point, Evan Dunham seems like kind of a bit of a riddle, and you kind of mentioned a little bit too. The guy hasn't fought in almost 2 years now. He's 38. You will likely, expect the best version of him to be on the safe side when you're preparing. You could not knowing what you're gonna get, which would be a guy who's very good, strong grappler. That's his strongest assets. But who is to say he hasn't taken steps forward in the striking in his time away? That happens in this sport. So in a way, just to be prepared as best as possible, do you almost have to prepare for an even better version of Evan Dunham? Like a guy who's maybe grown as a striker, you just got to be on the safe side. Can't just assume, oh yeah, he's just mainly a good grappler.
No, he has a underrated striking. He has a good boxing, very good boxing, and he lost 3 fights. I think the fight against Darius, he showed a lot of heart. He showed the real warrior spirit on the fight. He was getting a beating on the first round, and he survived, and he came back. He pushed the fight, and he managed to get a draw. And I think the fight against, I don't know, man. He didn't perform very well against Mercier, against Obi Mercier, against Trinaldo. It wasn't the best version of himself, but I've been watching him for a long time. I remember he fought Rafael dos Anjos, that's a good friend of mine. It was a great fight. He's a seasoned veteran, like I said, a real warrior spirit. And these 18 months that's been not competing, I'm sure he did not stop training. I'm sure he has his own gene, keep teaching, he kept improving, I'm sure. And I'm expecting a good version of himself, because if he's coming back, it's because he thinks he has more to give.
Exactly.
I think he can do more than what he did, but not against me. He can do that after this fight.
Now, I'm glad you kind of brought up those last two fights, the Trinaldo fight, the OAM fight. He has lost most of his fights have been losses by TKO, including his last three, including those two guys we talked about. Even if he has gotten better in his striking, does it just make too much sense to make this fight about standing on the feet? You're extremely confident in what you've done on your striking. You've shown in the last fight. It's just too obvious of a game plan that I'm going to keep this fight standing. His strength is still going to always be on the ground as good as he could have maybe gotten in striking.
I'm a jiu-jitsu guy. I want... That's my number one strategy, is work my jiu-jitsu. Doesn't matter against who. I think I'm much better grappler than he is. All respect to him. He's a black belt. He's a veteran. He has submissions. He has submitted against good people. But I think I'm just better grappler than him. I think I'm better everywhere. He could be physically stronger than me because he was a natural lightweight. But I think the inactivity that he has may come in place. I will try to use my read and my speed to keep ahead on the fight.
For so many fighters, and that's interesting that you say, I'm still a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner. That's still my A game, because so many times when a good grappler gets like a big highlight reel knockout like you got, it becomes addictive. I've talked to really good grapplers in the past, and they want to stand because it's more of a challenge. It's more interesting. It's away from all the grappling they've done for so many years. So would you say, has that even been a conversation in the gym going into this fight? Like, you know what? Yes, you did fantastic in the striking in your last fight, but let's not always forget. Or is that something you've just been saying to yourself? Like, look, I'm still a world-class jiu-jitsu guy. That's another great asset that the world knows about, but I'm still going to use what I'm known best for.
It doesn't matter how long I've been training strike, I will train jiu-jitsu way longer than that. It doesn't make sense, at least for myself. I know how good I am on the ground and how dangerous I can be and how unpredictable I am on my jiu-jitsu game. I'm very versatile, can do submissions from the bottom, from the top, back, side control, mount. So I need to work where I have the most advantage. So, and the most advantage that I see is on the ground. Only if the guy is like a very good grappler on my level, world-class grappler, and that maybe if he's not as good as me on the striking, I would keep the fights on the feet. But if you go to the ground, I would run from the ground. I would still do jiu-jitsu. I just won't look to put the fight there. But I want to represent jiu-jitsu. It would be hard now to break challenge the Bronx records, but
Yeah.
is to get as many finishes as I can, and if it can be done by submission, even better.
How much? Because we were talking about that this being a fight at 150. How much does those extra 5 pounds you won't have to cut for that fight? How much does it make life easier for the next week or so leading into this fight?
It doesn't make very
No.
easy.
Okay.
It was uncertain. I did the diet, but it was not. Hey, you have a fight. Let's just kill yourself on a diet. You you may fight. So I did the diet. My nutritionist Marcelo Ferro passed the diets I followed, but I wasn't as light as I could be. As the weight wasn't just coming off because we don't have as normal train. We're
Mm.
training uh, in a restrictive way.
Yeah.
It's a little restricted. You don't have all the training partners we have. You don't have as much sessions as we would like to have. So it's kind of hard to push yourself how you pushed it before, and that's definitely affecting on diet. So 5 pounds would be good for me and for Evan.
Now, last question. I talked to Bibiano Fernandez recently, and he told me how a friend of his actually passed away from coronavirus back in Brazil. Do you have any friends, family back home in Brazil that have been unfortunately touched by this, gotten the virus? Maybe not good stuff happened?
I have few friends that got the virus and mothers of my friends. So far, nobody was fatal. They
Mm.
all managed to recover, which is good. But Brazil is doing not very well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of every day. It's more cases, and is the next day is the record. Next day is the record. It's hard. It's very hard because they they politicize the virus. I never seen that before. That the virus
Mm.
is people cheering for the virus now.
Yeah.
Like seriously.
Yeah.
So it's a hard thing, and lots of people in Brazil don't follow the social distance, and some people just can't.
Mm.
They just can't. Some
Yeah.
people they don't work in the morning, they don't eat in the night, and it's hard to put. I feel bad because some governors or major in Brazil force a quarantine, and they don't provide for those people. How can you force those people to stay at home?
Yeah.
And then some people went out to work and they were put in jail, and it's
Wow.
just cool because if you're in jail they release you, if you're on the street they put you in jail, but if you're in jail they release you. So you'll be, it'll be a forever cycle, right?
Mm.
But you know you end up home because you can't be home because you need to provide for your family. So it's a bad situation. I hope Florida he's almost back to normal.
Mm.
Almost. Just gotta use the mask and do the things I did before. Hygiene, proper hygiene, wash your hands. There's nothing new for me. And so no, that's it.